Welcome everyone to episode 53 of What's That Sound podcast. My name's Stu Watts. Today I spoke with Lewis Mitchell, who's a producer, engineer and songwriter working out of Sydney. In this episode, we talk about having a flexible but artist-focused approach to recording. We also dived into remote recordings and productions and how that looks. Also, Lewis recently worked with Travis Scott and Mike Dean on their recent tour, and we discussed what working with artists of that caliber, the skills that are required to work with those sorts of artists. If you haven't yet had a chance to check out our What's That Sound merchandise, you can now pick up a t-shirt at whatsthatsoundpodcast.bandcamp.com. The link is also in the show notes. If you're not into merchandise and still want to support the podcast, you can donate via the link, the PayPal link. That's also in the show notes. Check it out there. And if you cannot afford to donate to the podcast, I totally get it. You can still help support the podcast by sharing us on your socials and also following or subscribing on all of the podcast platforms and our social media. That really does help the podcast out more than you might think. You can also rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. With all that out of the way, let's get into the podcast with Lewis Mitchell. This is an amazing episode. So many amazing nuggets of knowledge. I loved it, and I hope that you do too. Let's go. You're listening to What's That Sound with your host, Stu Watts. Welcome, Lewis Mitchell, to What's That Sound podcast.
Hello. How you doing?
How are you today?
Good, man. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Thanks for jumping in.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. Well, for anyone that doesn't know who you are, give us a bit of a rundown on who you are.
So I'm Lewis, producer, engineer from Sydney, Australia. I don't know.
Well, give us a quick rundown of what your day-to-day looks like. That might explain what you do a little bit more.
So my day-to-day, it varies quite wildly at the moment. So lately my day-to-day has been the whole writer-producer world, like walking into a room with somebody you haven't met yet and or multiple people you haven't met yet, and kind of being expected to have a finished song by the end of the day. So get in and just, I call it speed dating. Just jump on in and write a song, and then hopefully you want to go on a second date or whatever it is after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it could be anything like that to mixing stuff online, remotely for people, or coming in, recording vocals. I do a lot of vocal production. That'd be my main kind of gig.
Yeah.
Or producing an album for somebody. It really depends at the time, like what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's awesome. And I guess if you could split it into percentages, what would you say that, like, as the overall picture, what does that look like?
That's a tough one. It's been different every year for me. This year, I finished up working on an album earlier in the year, and then so that was kind of the first chunk of the year, was a lot of finishing that and kind of finishing a couple of EPs at the same time. And then post that, so I'm probably the back half of this year has been pretty much jumping around, working with new people. Probably half between, I'm spending, currently I try to write one song a week, do one of those kind of speed dating writing sessions a week. And that's been one or two pretty much for the back half of this year. I've been doing a day of teaching at JMC Academy, actually.
Awesome.
As well for the last couple of months. And then vocal production and mixing is kind of taking up the majority of the time. So I guess kind of the 50 or 60% of the time.
Yeah, sweet. Nice. Well, take us back to the start, where it all began. Where did music come into your life?
Right back when? I guess.
Man. Take us back.
I had some friends kind of getting their first instruments and stuff as it was kind of going from that primary school age to high school age. And my brother got a guitar at that point in time as well. He's 2 years older than me, so Shortly after that, I got a drum kit, and we decided my friend had a guitar, he had a guitar, I should get a drum kit so we could start a band. So my parents were very lovely and bought me a drum kit, and
Beautiful.
we set up our little like jam room in the garage, and from there kind of just fell in love with it, and was constantly playing with that same like friend who's been my best friend my whole life, and my brother, and getting really into it that way. And then I ended up kind of picking up a guitar as a bit of a joke at first, just to piss my brother off. So somewhat playing Flight of the Conchords and Tenacious D, and I used to kind of joke like Flight of the Conchords for the boys and Jonas Brothers for the girls, and kind of teaching myself to play. And then I ended up just playing like guitar or drums for like everybody, like every friend for all their music performances and stuff, and auditioned for a performing arts music school and went there for year 11 and 12, and they had a little tiny kind of recording studio, set up at the school, sorry. So I kind of started spending all my time in there and skipping other classes to spend time in there and all that stuff, and just fell in love with recording and producing and stuff as well. So from there I went to JMC, and one of my lecturers liked me a lot, because I was obviously kind of really keen, and gave me some work. He was just like, I've got a gig booked, dry hired the studio, I can't make it anymore, I'll tell them you're my assistant and you're great, will you come in and cover for me? And I was like, kind of shitting myself.
Love that, in the deep end. Okay.
in the deep
Let's
end.
go.
So I rocked up there, which was Jungle Studios at the time. It's now called Parliament Studios. Great space in Sydney. And just recorded my first dad rock band. There, and the guys there were just like, wow. Like, at the end of the day, they were like, wow, how old are you? How long have you been doing this? And I was like, this is my first time. And then they were like,
that's so sick.
They were just like, come work for us, which was an internship at the time, but it's pretty great.
So good. So well, tell us about like, what music you were listening to, and also like, were you paying attention to production? Was that kind of like a big focus, songwriting, that sort of thing? Yeah, take us through that.
I grew up listening to a lot of like kind of punk and hip hop and stuff too. I guess like because the intro into music and getting into music from as a kid was from video games and stuff. So it was your Tony Hawks and your Need for Speeds and stuff. So very like punk oriented, and then the hip hop and stuff that came with a lot of that stuff as well. So kind of was listening to a bunch of that and playing in pop punk bands and metal bands. Actually, sick. I kind of grew up in the heavy music scene, like the punk and hardcore scene in Newcastle.
Nice.
So my brother's band were doing quite well out of that scene at that point in time. And
what was their name?
Their name was Allay the Sea, and they used to do gigs with North Lane every second weekend back when they were all first kicking off. So
nice.
So I was kind of the little rat bag brother that tagged along and went on tour with them and stuff for
Good times,
for a while too. So
that's sick.
So it started out in that world. I played in more. I always kind of liked the more kind of commercial side of that. So I loved your Amity Afflictions and stuff, and in that kind of world. And then I played in bands that were more like Fall Out Boy and kind of that kind of route, and Blink-182. So I was playing and kind of writing in bands like that. And then at the end of high school, when I went to a music school, was around more people who love music, who like different types of music. So I just started to fall in love with like every different type of music. I was playing guitar for people who were playing more acoustic stuff and getting more into things like Paolo Nutini and stuff like that, which I never would have listened to as a pop punk kind of kid. And Jeff Buckley and Radiohead and all those kinds of things. And then also Kanye's, was like 808s and Heartbreaks was out kind of just prior to that, and a lot of my friends are getting into that in the early Odd Future days as well. So a lot of the early production kind of stuff was coming from that, and I think what like Mark Ronson was doing a bit at the time as well. Like it was really inspiring me. So kind of just had this big, it was all over the place. And I was like, oh, how do I can't play in one band because my focus isn't directed into one genre or anything anymore. So I that was at the point when I was like, production would be cool.
Yeah, cool. And you mentioned your teacher at JMC. Was it JMC? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so were they like your main mentor? Did you have other people that were teaching you the ropes, or like was it mostly just like you learning yourself? How did that go?
I was pretty into it and kind of just learning myself. I moved down to Sydney to kind of do this and had, like any 18-year-old who's just moved to a different city, like didn't really know anyone. So I was kind of spending all my time just doing this. And I was spending every minute I had outside of class and stuff just hanging around their studios, like kind of hoping that someone would not rock up to their booking and I could just kind of slide on in. So
yeah.
I was using friends' names to book extra time and all that kind of stuff too. So I was really in there like all the time.
That's good.
And the like kind of their studio staff there definitely noticed that, and they were all kind of I'm actually still really good friends with a lot of those guys today.
Yeah, good.
So like whatever, a bit over 10 years on. So my main studio guys at the time, like kind of helping me through were Nick Franklin of Franklin Audio, and Owen Butcher, who was working at 301 for a while as well.
Nice.
So I mean, I'm still great friends with those guys. I love those guys. And the guy who actually gave me that first gig was a guy named Peter Moses, who was my electronics teacher. And it was the most random way to kind of get into it. He had some math equation. He was like, if anyone can kind of get this in a minute, I'll give you a $50 iTunes card. And everyone gets out their calculators and starts doing it. And I just called out the answer without getting a calculator out. And he kind of like dismissed it and was just like, yeah, whatever, like kind of smart ass. And like then somebody with a calculator got the right answer and it's the same. And he was kind of like, what the hell? And
some Goodwill Hunting shit.
Yeah, it was so weird, man. But it just didn't seem that hard to me at the time. It was like something like, calculating picofarads and stuff, and it's like times pi. So he was like, how do you know that? And I'm like, well... Anyway, but he was like, great. And he bought in that $50 iTunes card the next week. And then he kind of noticed me a bit more after that. And we kind of would chat after classes a bit more after that. And he listened to a couple of things I was working on. He liked what I was working on. So, so that's kind of, it was a pretty weird way to kind of get the attention in the first place. But
yeah. And so, in your first few sessions, your first like productions, things like that, what do you remember from that time?
Oh, like sweating bullets? No.
Yeah.
What do I remember from that time?
And I guess your process and stuff, and how has it changed since then?
I think the process is much the same, like because the reason I kind of got in and could do well from the start was that, the day before going into the first studio, I read every manual that they had at the studio that I didn't know. Like, so, it's kind of that, the process has always been like be super prepared and kind of be, make sure that you can really do whatever you're saying you're going to be able to do. So that hasn't changed too much. The process, back then I was doing a lot more band kind of stuff. I don't really get many band clients. I don't feel like we have that many bands in Sydney and stuff at the moment. So don't really get many band kind of focused clients. So I guess it's changed a lot in that kind of way. Yeah, I think when you first start out too, you're thinking so much about the technical side of things. And then as you get further on, it's kind of like the technical side of things is just, it's like you don't think when you flick your indicator on in the car. You just do it or you're a dickhead either way.
Or it just doesn't work, Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And it's kind of I feel like it's the same as an engineer. It's like, or you're either really good at it and really efficient and you just do it, or you're kind of forgetting to put your indicator on and like other people think you're a bit of a dickhead, whatever it is. Like,
and ultimately, obviously that just like leads to you not getting a job like in the future. It's like, well, what are you going to do? You got to do the thing the right way. And like you said, just becomes second nature. And when you're out there by yourself, it's like you can either do it or you can't, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
totally.
Yeah. And so when it comes to your focus in productions, in recordings, in things like that, what do you think are the things that you're mostly focused on with the artist? And I guess, is there anything that, kind of sets you aside from others, or what helps you to keep getting those jobs and things like that?
I'm not sure what sets me aside. I think what sets aside kind of people who are good at this versus not are kind of more people-focused people, I'd say. So, I mean, the first thing to me is like, it's all about the client. So it's all about their art and helping them kind of get to where they want to be. Whether they're somebody kind of coming in doing their first record, or somebody who's just signed to a label, or somebody who's, a legacy artist, or something like that, who's been doing it for a long time, or the current number one artist in the world, like whatever it is, like you give them the same time of day, and you really kind of listen to them, and you're taking their vision, and you're just really trying to help them get to where they want to be. At least, I mean, that's my mentality. The focus point for me, I think, like, it kind of comes with the honesty of like the focus point is the song good? Do I think this direction is going to work for that? And kind of just like really just communicating that with artists like along the way. Like sometimes people earlier on in their journey, or later in their journey, like kind of don't really realize that their reference is a completely different kind of feeling or tempo or groove or whatever to what they're doing. So it's kind of that deciphering kind of what they want, and then kind of finding a way to kind of, to show them ideas and being like, okay, cool, we could do it like this, we could do it like this, and we could. But I think I'm very much like we could do this. I like this. What do you like? Like kind of, I'm not like okay, cool, this is it. Like, it's kind of like it's pretty collaborative in the way I work anyway.
And just providing options, and, as it sounds to me like, there's so many ways to skin a cat. So it's like, what is going to work for the both of us, really, finding that middle ground and that sort of thing, I guess. Does that resonate? Yeah,
totally. And I mean, jumping between genres and stuff every day too. It's I have a crazy world of influence that is super different to your crazy world of influence. So I want to hear what inspires you, and like I want to. I'm going to throw out some ideas and tell you what I like and give you my opinions on things, but it's your art, and I want to help you I don't want people to hear it and be like, Lewis did that. You know what I mean? Like, I want people to hear it and be like, that's one of that artist's best pieces of work. So I'm not really trying to put a sound on anything I do either. So
that's fair. And, when it comes to referencing and stuff like that, what are the sort of things that you're looking out for? Is it specific sounds, or is it more songwriting styles or production styles, that sort of thing?
It depends where I come in the production. Like sometimes I'm there, like more so lately I'm kind of there from the inception, like kind of helping write the song. But a lot of the time it's a voice memo that's been sent to me and I'm building a production around it, or it's a basic demo that they've done at home, or something that's a more baked demo that they've done. It's going to be different depending on where that kind of comes in. But I think that's like, when people send references through, it's always that kind of like one song's not as helpful as 5 songs to me. Like if you say you want to sound like this song by this artist, I'm going to be like, comparing that to that, like, well, that's not the same as that, or that can't really work in that, because they're just completely different feelings. But if you've got 5, it's like, okay, cool, that's a mood board of what you want.
Yes.
And I like a mood board of what you want. I want to be like, okay, cool, that's the world you are living in right now, and that's what you really are enjoying and stuff. I want to go and listen to your playlist for a week and really immerse myself in your world, and then I want to just go into the studio without thinking about it and just kind of tackle making something similar to those 5, 10, 20 songs, rather than let's chase that one hit.
I love that. That's so cool. It's like, it's kind of what springs to me is like, you're kind of, like you said, you're immersing yourself in that world. It's almost like method acting. You're kind of you're like uncovering what the picture picture needs to be. Like you're creating a new painting, for example, and it could be all of these different colors. It could look like all these different influences, but you're trying to unpack and create that amalgamation of what that world is.
Yeah, totally. I love that.
So fun. Yeah, that's sick. And I want to, we haven't really talked about this too much on the podcast yet, is the remote production and the remote side of things. And has it changed much or what have you really learnt by doing that, over the years?
I learned a bunch about myself and my own workflow over the years. Like I think at the start of doing remote productions, I was very used to being in the studio with artists like all the time, and coming from a band kind of focused background and doing like indie kind of artists and whatnot, and then doing kind of pop artists who are kind of borrowing from the indie world or borrowing from whatever world. I didn't have a drum kit set up in my bedroom or whatever at that point. Like I started the remote production thing during COVID. So it was like, I couldn't really be in a studio. So the limitations were there. And it was kind of like trying to figure out how to work to those limitations was kind of the biggest hurdle at the start, but then also how to back myself. Like I can play enough of every instrument to walk around the room with a band and be like, oh, try this inversion, try this, or whatever, and kind of direct different people. But then I kind of hands back off and it's like the guitarist is playing that guitar. I don't play that. So that's my background and that's my world. So when it came to remote productions, it was kind of that thing of like, at first I was calling on friends being like, all right, well, I'm remote producing this, but I will get a remote session player guitarist to play the guitar in this and I will do whatever. And I was zooming in with everybody or like just taking calls with everybody trying to figure that out. And sometimes the turnaround times would just slow me down like crazy.
I was gonna say that, yeah.
Like when you're overseeing multiple productions like that, they end up taking 3 or 4 times as long to do them remote like that. So at that point, I was like, okay, cool. Well, if I can play this guitar part, I should, because that's how we're going to get through it. So I stupidly went and I went to a guitar store that had a bunch of acoustic guitars that needed servicing and setting up for like super cheap. And I'd like bought 3 acoustic guitars for $100 and sunk about 50 to 100 on each, just like setting them up. They're all like 60s, 70s, beautiful guitars that just needed love. And and then set those up and then started doing more like, now I'm playing the acoustics and whatnot on this record, and now I'm playing this and this record too. And like in doing it, I was like, okay, cool, I can do that. So I guess kind of finding that, backing yourself in that kind of way, like that was a big hurdle for me at that point in time, because I was so used to the whole like, I'm going to tell you how I think this should be, and then sit back and at best, I might kind of tell a drummer how to play a part or something like that. They record the song and then I might have jumped in and punched in a couple of fills or something, along those lines. But I wasn't doing the most of the recording, so.
Yeah, it's funny that it's like learning by necessity of like what is the quickest way is ultimately going to be usually the best way to do something. It's like it's not the best necessarily for the actual performance or anything like that, but usually speed is what really stands out to most people. You want to get the most songs out there. You want to get the most things finished, because then that not only shows people that you've got a good work ethic, but you're just working on more shit at the end of the day. Yeah,
I still need to learn that one though. I definitely think I'm a quality over quantity kind of person in the work that I do. But but speed, like you're saying, speed is the essence. I'm very much like at the moment, whatever gets us to getting the idea down there and everything done the quickest, I will do at that point in time, because I want us to all be happy and excited in the room. But then I'll probably spend a day or two redoing a lot of the quick speed things, like like later at home, just because I want that extra 5% out of it or whatever. So I mean, it's if you're in the game to make money, that's not the best way to do it.
True, yeah. Now I want to talk like collaborations. I'm going to rattle off some names here. First of all, you've been doing in-house production work with Sony Music and Universal and things like that. That is obviously quite for a lot of people seemingly unachievable thing. But I'm going to rattle off some names. Anderson .Paak, Kid Laroi, Gang of Youths, Travis Scott, ASAP Rocky, The Weeknd, and the Veronicas, huge names. When it comes to working with artists like this, what is the difference, I guess, and how do you look at collaboration? Do you look at it differently when working with these sorts of artists, or is it just business as usual? I guess there was a few questions in there, so sorry. But
I mean, it's much the same. I try to go into all the sessions with the same mentality. I'm there because I want to serve the artist the best as possible, and do a good job, and that's fun. I've been having a lot of conversations with friends recently and other producers about this. I just spent a pretty busy month because Travis Scott and The Weeknd and Mike Dean's crew and stuff were in town during October and stuff. So kind of back to back doing a lot of kind of those big international things, which are usually just, engineering kind of vocal stuff. It's not building whole productions when it comes to those ones. And then kind of going straight off the back of that, or in the middle of that even, kind of writing songs with kind of local artists and newer kind of people and stuff. And some I've been super hyped on and really enjoying and stuff. And then occasionally you get ones where people don't have that same work ethic yet. People often talk about the big rappers and those guys having kind of attitudes or something like that. And I think they're in this, doing this every day, and they work at a certain speed, and they kind of get frustrated if you're not at that speed. And I kind of see it. It's like playing a game of tennis. You can't really get a good rally happening if the person your opponent isn't decent either. So it's kind of, I can imagine in their shoes it gets quite frustrating with some people too. So I can see how that kind of works out. I find it really fun. It's, again, if it was a game of tennis, it's like you getting to play with somebody who's great. So for me, I think I'm probably most comfortable in those sessions because it's at a speed in which I feel very comfortable working at, and I really enjoy. So I love that, and I kind of I love that and live for those, and especially with the vocal production stuff, I feel like that's where I'm okay, cool. I believe in myself, I can do this, so I really enjoy being in those ones. But sometimes you're with somebody and you're doing 300 takes and you're cutting line by line, and it's I can do this, in terms of vocal production or something, but it's a very different job. It's super, it's 7 songs cut pretty quickly in a day with a number one artist versus, one song cut over 7 days. That's an exaggeration, but
no, but it's a really interesting perspective that you bring to it, because it is true. It's funny splitting it into 2 different jobs. I've never even thought about it like that. You really are. It's the speed game or the intricacy, take by take game is, it's 2 different jobs. And it is funny when you having seen a couple of those sessions here as well, where it's they're doing that every day, and you just think of they need that to be able to do their job as well. Their job now being at that world class, high output level, that they need to be able to do that every day. They need to know that they can go to a studio and they have someone that is capable of being yep, I can do this job for you, and I can get it done, and you don't have to worry. I can, hit record and get the new session up, have my templates ready, all that sort of thing. They need that, and that's a different game that they're playing.
Yeah, totally. And exactly that. It really is two different versions of me, or 2 different kind of, kind of jobs that you do. And that's crazy too, because that's just vocal production, that's just one of the hats that you wear, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get a bit nerdy, and let's talk about some of your favorite tools that you like to use, whether that's hardware, software. Let's start off with, what is your favorite piece of software that you like to use?
Oh, I'm because I teach this and do stuff. I'm constantly trying to show people that the same templates I do could be used with stock plugins and all of this. You know, like it's you don't need to spend $1 million, you know, to get quick at this or do this or anything. So. My favorite software, I'm going to be really lame and say Mutamatic.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yep,
that is because if I have to click the talkback button to tell you whatever about the take, I've just lost 3 seconds that I can quickly chop that down and comp while we're talking. So the workflow, the speed that those people are expecting, you know, if the talkback automatically opens for me, I can quickly edit that, and by the time I'm just like, yeah, nice, like let's go for another one, I've already just quickly comped in my favorite bits of that take. So that speed and stuff kind of comes with a tool like that, and that's a free tool. So like that's I'm gonna say probably that one, and then I'll give you the paid one. It's Isotope RX for everything. Like from if I'm doing a writing session and I've accidentally got some click bleed in an acoustic guitar, I can go in and I can. You know, it's like Photoshop for audio. I can go in and just quickly tidy that up, take the click bleed out of it. I can, the same thing. I have that open when I'm doing vocals. I can go through and clean up your little like mouth noises. You're a podcaster, you know what I'm talking about. So
I'm very much more of like loving the tools that like just do it all for you. Like, you know, they are getting better and better, and even RX has the automatic stuff now that like, especially for podcasts, not so much for like productions, but even still, I'm like, if I can get something to do it for me, I'm like, just do it for me. But I wish I could.
I wish I could. I think, and that's kind of like that. When I'm in recording, I'll often use something like that. There's kind of tools that get me closer, quicker while we're doing it. I love that stuff. Like, even down to your beat detectives and stuff in Pro Tools. Like, I don't think I've ever left Beat Detective and not re-edited later. But I will quickly lock it in so I can move on to the next thing. And then I'll go in and I'm pretty anal on the fades. So I'll go in and I'll be like, okay, cool. It's detecting like kind of just that little bit into the transient. I don't want that. Like I want to go back. 100%. I think like when it comes to that kind of stuff, like a lot of the work I do, I really think you can tweak a compressor for 3 hours, or you can go and you can fix your edit for 20 minutes, and your better edit will sound better than that edit you had before with all the juiced up extra things that you paid $1 million for.
It's funny that like what you've brought to the table now is that in a production, in an engineering session, speed is what's important, getting things done as quickly as possible. But when it comes to mixing and editing and making sure you get a high quality output at the end of it, the intricacies, the little 1%ers are the things that really make a production stand out. So I love that perspective. That's awesome. Yeah. Do you have any? Sorry.
No. Yeah, please.
I guess, do you have any moments? Well, actually, let's stay on the favorite tools. Let's then go to microphones, hardware, that sort of thing. Do you have any favorites, or are you kind of just like whatever works?
I think I might get shot if I don't say something like the Sony C800 being so much in the hip hop world. Yeah. But no, I use the Sony C800G a lot when I'm doing those hip hop sessions, because it is iconic sound for that's how Travis sounds like Travis. That's how a lot of artists kind of sound like they sound. It's like it instantly sounds like their records as soon as they start talking into it. So that mic is incredible for that. But it's I would definitely not use that in most other genres. So when it comes to other stuff, I mean, I personally own a Neumann U87, like one of the old I models, not AI models. So the 70s one. And I carry that around a lot because it sounds good on just about everyone. It's my second favorite mic on everyone. It's maybe the Sony's a little bit better, maybe the Telefunken's a little bit better or something like that, but the Neumann works on everyone, so it's a good little like writing session carry around.
Yeah, it's cool. I love that, having a specific tool that can get you the place where you need to be because you know it's the suitable thing for that artist, or having the one fits all. I love having both of those approaches. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think
sick.
you kind of need to have both of that. Yeah, it's like, I mean, everyone needs a versatile Stratocaster or something like that, and then whatever genre you play, you might have something else. Or, if you own a studio, you should have a few versatile instruments laying around. For sure.
That's sick. Moving back to, your process and stuff like that, was there anything over the years that was the real indicating moment, or a couple of indicating moments where it was like, that was a real turning point for me, that this is where I leveled up?
Yeah, I think every time I kind of, feel like I fell short on something, which, I mean, sometimes it's just me being hard on myself. I feel like I'll go and I'll spend way too long kind of overcoming that problem or that fear or whatever, so I don't feel uncomfortable like that again. There's been times where, I mean, the first time I did a big rap session like that, or one of the first times I did a big rap session like that, I didn't feel like I was fast enough. We had one night where I was sweet, and then we had the second night after 8 hours of being in a hot boxed room where I was kind of flailing a little bit, and it kind of came down to I didn't prep the session, and because I didn't prep the session, the BPM wasn't correct. It was slightly off. So when we got halfway down the track, the like running it back 2 bars wasn't exactly 2 bars and stuff like that, and it was slowing me down. And like it's something where the 2 minutes to fix that in someone's session might be might be okay for that artist, but when it's an A-list artist like that, they're not expecting that. So for that, that job definitely made me a bit kind of stressed about like, oh shit, okay, cool. Like I was using the studio's computer, not my computer for that session. I didn't have the apps I have. I mean, back then Auto-Tune didn't have auto key as well. And I kind of learnt from a big songwriter back then to, there was this DJ software called Mixed In Key that we could drop a beat into, and it'd quickly give you the BPM and the key. So as I was importing it into Pro Tools, I'd quickly drop it in there. And by the time it was in Pro Tools, I had the BPM and the key. So I just quickly mapped that in the session and would move forward. But because it wasn't on my computer, I didn't have the softwares, and the assistant had prepped this one session for me. And it kind of really threw me off for a minute. So I feel like at that point in time, I was like, cool, I need my templates. I need to have my templates, my shit everywhere I go.
Yeah.
I need to be, I need to have all these things. These are the kind of requirements I need to have to work at that speed. So, from that point, now my Dropbox has templates for everything down to Melodyne, to drop onto a computer if I need to.
That's huge. I love that. So many good tips here. Can extract all these little bits and pieces from this conversation.
Love it.
Good. What do you find then are like some of the hardest things about being a producer, engineer, mixer? What are the things that you can point to that you're like, okay, this is still really difficult, and then how do you approach those things?
I don't know what the hardest things are. I think sometimes the hardest things are just, it's more like focus outside of the work itself. I don't find anything on the technical side difficult anymore. I don't feel like I have for the last few years. But I do find juggling certain things can be difficult with, like just personalities, expectations, that kind of stuff. Mostly it comes down to mental health. Like, that's the part where I find the most difficult is kind of like, being able to do something and move on from something where you didn't feel like you did your best work and go to the next thing or do whatever. So, the funny thing is, like, I'm definitely getting to a point where I feel like if I'm kind of can get my life in order outside of this, I'll just continue to do great work. And that's kind of where the constant things are, like trying to have a clear mind going into every session and trying to keep outside kind of things at the door as you're kind of going into that, trying to keep I don't love having money conversations with people. So trying to keep that stuff like up front and out of the way. So there's nothing like that in not having to have hard conversations in the studio that aren't, there's plenty of hard conversations when you tell somebody you don't like a line of lyrics.
Yeah.
You don't need the hard conversations of like other business shit and percentages and splits and all that kind of shit in that same room, right? So trying to have all that stuff in order beforehand is probably the part I personally struggle with. I probably could use a manager on that side.
Couldn't we all? So I guess when it comes to those sorts of things, like the business side of stuff, like I think it's really important that we do talk about these sorts of things, the finances, the mental health stuff as well. Like what did you do to implement, like what specific go-to things that you could, advise younger people on to eliminate those tough conversations? What are some of those specific processes that you set up?
I got to start this by saying I still don't think I have it like amazing, but I'll tell you how I've made it better.
Please.
The same approach to getting quicker and better with stuff in the studio is kind of like eliminate kind of the emotion or something out of the sending the invoice is the big thing. Like, I mean, I struggled with that for years, like kind of feeling like, oh, well, like, am I worth this amount of money, or am I, that kind of thought that can really kind of go in your head or ruminate in your head if you do struggle with mental health stuff. So eliminating that stuff by kind of semi-templating that side of things too. And there's this amazing tool that we have now called ChatGPT or any other kind of thing.
Yes, I love it.
I use that like a lot for, like I have templates for things, just to kind of template an email, just give me the idea of what I want to say, and then I'll go and I'll soften it and make it a bit more palatable or whatever. When it's kind of talking about, what the payment terms for this particular project are, and producing and being a writer producer on some and just a mix engineer or just a whatever on others, it's going to vary a lot, like kind of how involved I am in a project and kind of what's expected in terms of payment, and if there are splits on the masters or if there are like publishing splits and stuff as well. It's all going to vary like quite a bit depending on my involvement. So it is a thing where you can't really just blanket, this is what it is. Every project is different. So kind of trying to take a bit of that, the variance out of it by having some kind of semi-templated responses to that, or just things that I can at least look at and go, oh yeah, that's kind of the best way to approach that. In terms of an email thing, I don't think I have any problems when I talk to people over the phone or like one-on-one like this. I can kind of talk things through and make people comfortable. But when it comes to sending an email, like I'll be sweating every word of it if I don't have that kind of stuff kind of sorted. So I definitely keep my life kind of organized in that if I can. And I think that's probably the best way to kind of do it.
Yeah,
for me,
and
anyway.
like you said, like, templating it's a funny way to term it, because like we think of templates in sessions and stuff like that, so it makes it easy for us to think like that when it comes to email and those sorts of things. But you are right in the sense of when you just have that stuff set up from the get-go and you have either those conversations beforehand so that you're not having to have difficult conversations in sessions and things like that, or it's like, we don't need to talk about this when it comes to like splits or whatever. We can talk about this after the fact. That just know that we do need to have that conversation. You are removing some sort of emotion, even though it's the same conversation. You're removing the emotion from it, from being in that, okay, this shouldn't be talked about right now. So why are we introducing it here? Like, it feels weird. Like, and we're dealing with emotional people. And that's the other side of it as well, is like, we're dealing with people that probably overthinking everything. Like so.
You just said it really well though. The whole idea of that is not like, you just said, you go into it saying, we might have to talk splits later, but you've had that conversation up front saying we might have to talk this later. You're not just leaving it for later. Yeah. And that's the kind of the big thing for me, is just like having the initial expectations met and set up before you go into a room. Like I'm not I like to make it very clear if it's you've hired me for this day, or if it's you've hired me for this song. And I think a lot of people kind of mess that up, where people are coming in and they're expecting at the end of the day they get the song done, and sometimes it's the artist. The artist is fucking around for the whole day, and you can't. It's not on you. But if your expectations were set at the start, where you said it's for the song, that second day that you have to spend on that is kind of your own fault. And that's like, at least that's the way I see it. So it's that. Having the expectations met at the start is kind of the big thing. So you just want to have a conversation up front and just say like, hey, we'll kind of sort this and be friendly about it. Like, hey, we'll sort this later, but I'm just letting you know this is kind of what this is covering, or this is what this, this is kind of how I usually work. I can't, you're a first time client. I can't quote you very specifically, but it will be somewhere in this ballpark. This is kind of how I break it down, or however you do business. Like it's, everyone's business runs in a different way. So it's kind of like, I mean, I see all of this stuff. It's like having a good wingman in a certain way. Like, I hate coming to, even in this kind of thing, I hate having to tell people who I've worked with. I hate having to tell people like,
don't worry, I'll do that for you.
Like who I am or what I've done. It's so I find that really hard. So I love when I go into a certain thing and someone can say it for me, even if it's like a thing where like, come on, let's be real. Like a lot of the time people are asking your PR team or you like to send the information they're going to read about you for you, so you don't have to say it in the moment. It's the same thing. Like it's like you just want to have that conversation in the air. You want to set it up so you can go in, be creative, be amazing, write a song, play a guitar, do whatever you do, and just not have to think about any of the business shit.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like that there's a couple of things. One thing I loved is that you split up I'm going to be working with you on this song, or I'm going to be working with you on this day. I think that's a great thing, and something that I've, put into play is, packages for songs is like, this is what it is. You pay for it. You get this. You're expecting either this amount of days, or, there's no limit to the days, or whatever it is. Or you are saying, no, you're coming in for the day and we're working on this track, and, if it doesn't get done, it doesn't get done. We can always do another day, but that's what this looks like. I love that. I think that's really important. And the other thing is like the fact that what we do day to day seems like it's pretty obvious, where it's like, I'm a producer, I work on songs, or I'm an engineer, I hit record. But it's not like that, and everything is so flexible, and so you have to be so adaptable to the potential of things happening. It's not like it's cut and dried. It never is, and it never will be. So having that awareness of, I have to get good at having conversations, because communication is so crucial, because if you have good communication, you can unpack whatever it is that comes out of it. If you don't, you're going to constantly run into these situations where it's like, fuck, man, I don't know what to do here. This is hard. But it's like, when you look at it like, no, let's just have a conversation and we'll figure it out. Like that's when you kind of start winning, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think like a lot of producers kind of, you hear a lot of people kind of say negative things a lot of the time, about a client or whatever. And I think a lot of those conversations, usually when you unpack those with the person, it comes down to a lack of communication at the start. So, it's that thing where like kind of resentment forms from people feeling like they were unfairly treated. And if you have a conversation about terms and stuff up front, like people don't feel like they're unfairly treated. So hopefully neither party is going to have some kind of resentment. And that's like that just takes so much of it out of it. Like, that's not a stress you need to have. Like, the stress you want to have is like, as an artist, like, do I love my vocal performance on that line, or, am I happy with this overall, or like whatever. And as a producer, it should be like, have I done my best to kind of help support that? And, and at least to me, that's kind of, again, like how I kind of see it, right? It's, you don't want to have the stress about the artist kind of relation stuff, like in that kind of way.
Yeah, for sure. Nailed it. And let's talk about like what I want to know, what things continue to excite you, or, surprise you even? Like, what are the things that you're regularly looking forward to, I guess?
Meeting new artists, always. Like, I love it. I still listen to like every demo that comes my way. Always, I get really excited by that. I get really excited if anyone wants to talk about, if anyone shows passion in what they are doing and wants to talk about it. I get a bit too excited and I probably give a bit too much time to it. I find that a lot when because I do these guest lecture things as well. Like I find I never get out of there on time because I get stuck talking to somebody because they're passionate and excited, and I'm like, oh hell yeah, I love seeing that. And I talk for too long. So I mean, I'm excited by a lot of those things. I'm enjoying being in rooms, writing with people and doing that a lot more. Because it is so personal. I really enjoy that side of it. I'm honestly just excited to work on new music all the time. Like I think it's a fun thing where I don't know, I listen to the hot hits or whatever on Spotify and those kinds of, or like New Music Fridays and the top kind of each genre that I kind of work within playlists and stuff. And I get really excited to be like, oh, cool. Like, like it's this type of drum machine, it's this type of guitar sound, it's this type of whatever. I'm like, sweet. Like,
yeah.
Give me that artist.
Or the opposite of like,
what
the hell is that? Like, I don't even know what that fucking sound is, man. I need to figure out what that is. How do you do that?
That excites me too. Like Googling it, like, I don't know. I still spend so much time I spend way too much time learning still. And just trying to.
There's never too much time. Oh, well, there is if you're not making money, but yeah.
I mean, that's awesome. That's kind of, anytime that I'm not in a session and I've got time, I'm like looking into how I can improve and do better, or like, listening to current music and stuff and just kind of being ready. It's like, again, sports kind of stuff. It's kind of that like off-season training, like being match fit always,
Yeah, for sure. So are there any things that you've got going on in the next, 6, 12 months that you're really excited? Can you share any of the stuff that you're working on?
Oh man, I wish I was that organized. I wouldn't have a clue. I don't know what I'm doing past next week. I'm still like,
fair enough.
Well, it's 2 weeks before Christmas now, and I'm still trying to figure out Christmas plans and how long I'm taking a break for and stuff with my family. So,
well, I guess then what are you looking forward to working on in the new year? What things are you're excited to do, or continue to focus on? I guess
continue to focus on. I'm very keen to be. I feel like I finished some albums and I jumped back in doing a lot of writing and production stuff with people, and I feel like in that kind of time either the industry clients or myself have forgotten that I'm also good at mixing. So I'd love it if people sent me some more mixes if anyone's watching this. But also like I'm loving this thing, like that setting the rule of like at the start of this year, I set the rule of doing 1 day a week of writing production sessions because I felt like that was the area where I hadn't kind of, I wasn't on par with the other things yet. Like I feel very like lucky that I have been appreciated for my engineering and production and mixing work. And I was like, well, maybe I'll do the writing production thing. So I'm doing a solid day a week of that. I'd love to work with more artists and kind of meet more people doing that. Very excited for that, and we'll continue to commit that 1 day a week. But yeah, like more mixing stuff, more production. Just keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, love it.
Meet That's more awesome, people, do it.
Good stuff. Well, I like to always finish up the last question of each podcast with what best bits of advice you could give, first of all, to producers, engineers, songwriters, that sort of thing. And then secondly, for artists.
Ooh. For producers and stuff, I mean, really it's just like keep at it. Be honest with yourself about what you like and do what you like is the big thing. I mean, I very stupidly have jumped between multiple genres and not niched down in any way, where I do probably 5 different genres in 5 different roles. And if you are honestly very good at one thing and you really love doing that, like focus on your strengths, rather than focusing on your weaknesses and that kind of thing, and push those forward. I wish I could be a bit more like that. I have too much fun and want to jump around. And as artists, like maybe the opposite of that, like explore, refine your thing too. I mean, it's a big thing. If you can, as a young producer and artist, like lock in with some other people and kind of find a team, that's always good. I think, we're in a world where like everyone can kind of make demos at home. Everyone can do productions at home, but I'm also find being pretty heavily in the label world, like by the time people are signing and stuff like that, they've got all these like really weird kind of baked in habits. And sometimes, sometimes they don't really find their own sound, or they're too busy chasing someone else's, or they've slapped on the Travis Scott preset that they downloaded or something along those lines. And I just think be yourself, be honestly yourself, and go for that. Like, the Travis Scott thing is not going to work on someone else. He's already amazing doing that,
So sick. Well, Lewis, thanks so much for joining me today. I really, really appreciate your time. There's been so many amazing little nuggets that I'm very happy to share with the world. And thanks so much, man.
Thank you for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
You're very, very welcome. And hopefully we can catch up again soon.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone for checking out this podcast. It means the world to me. Do us the classic favors of sharing this podcast around and, making sure you followed or subscribed. We will see you next time on What's That Sound podcast. Thanks for listening to What's That Sound. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe on your podcast platform to stay up to date with each new episode. We'll catch you next time.